Number 5. Leap Castle. For 700 years, Leap Castle has proudly stood in Ireland, boasting a rather infamous reputation as the most haunted castle in the world, which I feel is a title it must have really fought hard for. I mean, Dracula had a castle, that's gotta be the most haunted castle. The castle was first built in the 13th century, home to the O'Bannon clan, but it would be adopted by the ruling O'Carroll clan, who seized control of it completely by the 15th century. From here, ownership would pass from father to son, but was punctuated by blood. Rival clans, wars, and even family member assassinations were all par for the course of Leap Castle's bloodied history. A grim oubliette where prisoners would be pushed from a window, landing into a pit of spikes, really completed the castle. After centuries of battles and brawls over the castle, it would eventually be burned in 1922 during the Irish Civil War, where it was then abandoned. Now, it goes without saying that a castle that saw as much bloodshed as this is home to a bevy of trapped spirits. The most present one is the Bloody Chapel spirit. Legend has it that one of the O'Carroll children had his own brother assassinated to gain power. His brother, a member of the clergy, is said to restlessly wander the burnt-out chapel. Visitors report seeing beams of light, the smell of burnt rubber, and the shadow of a priest in the stairwell. There's reports of a spirit of a young girl named Emily, who fell from the rampart in the 16th century and tragically lost her life. There's stories of people seeing the ghost of a young girl walking atop the battlements, dragging a misshapen leg as she walks. Today, you can try to visit the Leap Castle if you're feeling daring enough to contact the owner Sean Bryan, who does offer private tours. It'll be you, him, and all the spirits the castle has to offer. And hey, if you're looking for a vacation to a haunted spot but you don't want to leave your room, why not subscribe to Top 5 Scary? We got more haunted sites than you could visit in a lifetime, and we're just a click away. Moving on. Number 4. Separate prison. Going to prison probably sucks. I've never been, but I have heard bad things. A regular prison is pretty bad enough without the wardens getting too creative with their punishments, and then there's prisons like Australia's infamous separate prisons, where it seems like they were trying to set a world record for cruelty. Built in 1833, it was going to serve as a home for some of England's toughest crooks who had to be shipped all the way down under. A home for the toughest criminals needed to be pretty tough, right? Well, unfortunately, it was. Just in the psychological sense, not physical. Separate prison was inspired by the philosophical concept of the panopticon, a template for a prison where all prisoners would be seen under one watchtower. Inmates were to only ever be referred to by the numbers sewn on their uniforms, and were to wear black hoods at all times they weren't in their cells to help them better reflect on their crimes. I'm sure that went over swimmingly with a bunch of violent criminals. Well, it didn't. It mostly led to inmates going mad or offing each other in the hopes that capital punishment was preferable to being imprisoned there, which is a sign that your system is working. Look, it probably goes without saying that this is a haunted prison now, right? I mean, there's over 1,000 bodies buried in unmarked graves on an island that held a prison where everyone had to wear dark hoods. There's no way it's not haunted. Well, it's on this list, so it is. The prison is now owned by Australia's Parks and Wildlife Services, who offer ghost tours of the grounds, where visitors report all sorts of hauntings. Screams, wailings can be heard wandering through the halls, rocking chairs moving by themselves during the night. There's an option on the prison's website to take a tour with just a lantern to guide you, if you're feeling particularly brave. Number 3. Akigara Forest. Akigara Forest is often known as the Sea of Trees. It's a hauntingly beautiful park in Japan that carries a dark reputation. Hundreds of people over the years have come to Akigara to take their own life, leading to its infamous and dark distinction. Spiritualists and paranormal investigators in Japan believe that because there have been so many tragic deaths that happened in Akigara, the forest itself is literally growing denser, and the paranormal activity and dark energy inside as well. This seemingly serene forest has been host to all kind of dark rumors, with some stating that the forest is hallowed ground, haunted by demonic spirits for years. Others claim that the forest drives people to madness due to high deposits of iron, which cause compasses to malfunction, meaning travelers would get hopelessly lost. Some visitors to Akigara Forest report hearing screams, wallowing, or crying, while walking through the trees. There's no doubt that there's probably a very dark feeling walking through these trees, knowing everything that's ever transpired there. As well, there's something about the knotted mess of all the branches and bark that seems sort of surreal, not quite of this earth, but maybe that's just the legends doing the work for me. Japanese authorities have been doing their best to try and reclaim the forest's haunted reputation, putting up signposts all over to try and deter anyone who would take their own life to instead reach out, call for authorities, and they're no longer publicizing any cases of this happening, hoping to one day salvage the tormented reputation of an otherwise serene spot. Number 2. Paveglia. I've talked about Paveglia on this channel before, and I almost kind of can't resist bringing it up again because I just find it so fascinating. Describing Paveglia sounds like Italy was intentionally trying to make the setting to a horror movie. It's just off the coast of Venice. Initially, the island served as a quarantine zone for those suffering from the plague. Infected were shipped off to Paveglia to wait out their final days. The trouble was, a lot of the people who would end up getting sent to Paveglia weren't even sick at all, showing minor to no symptoms at all. However, that probably changed pretty quickly once they were sent to a quarantine zone of exclusively sick people. It's said that the ground on Paveglia is so hallowed that there's more ash from human remains than there is soil on the island. Eventually, in 1922, Paveglia underwent a bit of a rebranding, since centuries of being known as the quarantine zone was hurting its image and its tourist economy, and it rebranded as an island home to a mental hospital. Now, of course, this mental hospital was home to doctors who performed sick experiments on their patients, often with little to no care for the patient's well-being. Chisels, drills, lobotomies without any form of anesthetic or proper treatment, all these fun things. It's said that the lead doctor at the facility was eventually so overcome with guilt over what he had done and haunted by the screams and spirits of his patients and victims that he would eventually throw himself off of the tower on the center of the island. Now, to deter all you would-be ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts out there who think Paveglia is sounding like the holy grail of haunted spots, I should warn you that you are probably not going to get in there, as it is extremely forbidden to enter, as in it's illegal. It's punishable to the fullest extent of the law and is considered a criminal act to trespass onto Paveglia. But a better question is, why would you even want to? Some spirits are better left unbothered. At the number 1 spot is Pripyat, the town outside of Chernobyl, the famed nuclear reactor. 50,000 people used to live here, and now it's a ghost town. Sorry, couldn't resist. It's difficult to summarize just exactly what happened in Chernobyl in under a 2-minute time frame, but you know, we can gloss over some of the big details for you. An overload at a nearby reactor caused a nuclear meltdown that ended up causing one of the worst ecological disasters in human history. A massive chain of unfortunate events had to all happen for the incident to play out the way it did, and unfortunately that's exactly how it went. It's a fascinating case, and there are tons and tons of documents and things to read about it, and you should after this video because it's fascinating. 50,000 people had to be evacuated basically overnight, and Pripyat turned into a ghost town, now standing as a harrowing monument to the dangers of unchecked nuclear power. Photos from inside Pripyat almost don't look real. They look like something out of a post-apocalyptic movie, and I guess that kind of makes sense because it is post-apocalyptic when you think about it. Unlike a lot of the others on this list, Pripyat doesn't need any supernatural ghost stories to elicit a sense of fear. It's haunted, definitely, but more so by radiation and unease than anything else. Mutated animals and vegetation, abandoned Ferris wheels, and an unmissable sense of dread in the air certainly paint a picture of one of the Earth's darkest spots. To some, Pripyat is the ultimate dark tourist destination, infamous and wholly unique. There's actually a whole subculture around venturing into the zone for recreation, a group of people who call themselves stalkers after the 1972 film and not the first-person shooter RPG series set in Chernobyl. These people illegally trespass into the surrounding areas of Chernobyl for the ultimate urban exploration thrill. Now, there are guided tours as well of Chernobyl's surrounding areas for those who are less familiar with the dangers of the zone, but want to get up and close and personal nonetheless.
Coming in at number 5, we have South Manitou Island in Leland. South Manitou Island is part of an island chain in Lake Michigan that extends north to the Straits of Mackinac. The only public access is by ferry from Leland, Michigan. The island consists of a ridge of tilted layers of limestone buried under a blanket of glacial debris. 16 miles offshore from the Lilano Peninsula, featuring 300-foot sand dunes, deserted shoreline, and empty campground, it's about as terrestrially creepy as you can get in Michigan. In the 1800s, the island became a popular harbor for ships traversing the newly built Erie Canal into the Great Lakes and on to Chicago. One local legend surrounds a ship full of passengers stricken with cholera stopped at South Manitou, where sailors buried their victims in a mass grave, some of them still alive at the time. Soon after this incident, the first appearance of ghosts and hauntings began. The mass grave is believed to be near the old cemetery just north of the Bay campground. This is also near where the old dock used to be located. Additionally, the passage between mainland Michigan and Manitou is one of the deadliest sections of Lake Michigan. This is due to a sudden weather change, creating a navigational hazard, causing over 50 known shipwrecks. Traffic was quite busy here during the late 1800s, and there were frequent accidents where ships would literally run into each other. Off the coast of the island lies the shipwreck of the SS Francisco Morazan, where rumors say a young island boy died after trying to explore on his own. There are also 2 cemeteries on the island and an ancient cedar forest where voices are said to be heard. The haunting of this island is so bad it has driven park rangers to go mad and demand to be taken off the island. One ranger even confessed to hearing voices, footsteps, and slamming of doors inside buildings that were otherwise unoccupied. Coming in at number 4, we have Masonic Temple. With over 16 floors and 1,000 rooms, this Gothic temple is one of the most striking buildings in Detroit. Furthermore, this is the largest Masonic temple in the world. According to rumors, there are hidden passageways, rooms, and staircases, so be careful as you might get lost quite quickly within the walls of this temple. The most famous urban myth associated with the temple is that of the architect George D. Mason. Legend has it that Mason went bankrupt funding the construction of the temple. He was going through financial difficulties and was very close to foreclosure. Due to this stress, George D. jumped to his death from the roof. This story will back up the fact that many reports of a ghost climbing the steps to the roof of the building as if stuck in a loop of his darkest moment. Even scarier, additionally, guards frequently find the door to the roof unlocked, even when it was just checked moments earlier. Additionally, the temple has various cold spots and doors are reported to close suddenly. One of the roof doors is said to swing open just moments after it is locked by a watchman. Many people report the feeling of being watched while inside of the building. Coming in at number 3, we have Doherty Hotel. The Doherty family has owned and operated the hotel since it opened in the 1920s. The Doherty men were and remain the business managers. However, as the current owner Jim Doherty tells it, it was the Doherty women who were the heart and soul of the business. The hotel has a colorful history. During Prohibition, it was a speakeasy, a place for backroom gambling and adult entertainment. It was also a meeting place for the Mafia and Purple Gang. Here, they worked out their differences. In 1938, the hotel was the site of one of the Michigan's most notorious murders. Isaiah Lebo, former Purple Gang attorney turned Purple Gang businessman, was murdered in the bar. He was shot by his cousin and business partner Jack Livingston and sadly passed away. Ever since, there have been numerous hauntings. Some believe it's Lebo who haunts the ground or grandmother Helen Doherty, who passed away at the hotel. But there is one thing for sure, and it's the many ghost stories that are now associated with the hotel. Guests, visitors, investigators, employees, and the owners have all had some kind of paranormal experience at the hotel, which includes perfume scent wafting through occasionally, loud knocking, bedroom doors open and close by themselves, and dark apparitions and shadowy figures have been spotted anywhere from the lobby to the top floor. Also, the spirits of other murder victims roam the halls, lobbies, and rooms. While some can be seen, others prefer to just make noise. Coming in at number 2, we have Michigan's first state prison. Established in 1838, Michigan's first state prison remained in operation through 1934. The prison served as the nucleus for the city as it spanned some 20 acres. Over the years, it relocated and at one point became the largest walled prison in the world with around 6,000 inmates. In 1952, in response to poor medical care, brutality from the guards, and bad food, 2 maximum security prisoners took hold of a guard and used his keys to release other inmates. A days-long riot ensued, resulting in 9 guards being held hostage. Additionally, the riot resulted in the deaths of several inmates and guards before it was extinguished by the National Guard. The inmates fought for and won a list of 11 demands for reform. Today, the old prison has become the Armory Arts Village, a residence and studio for local artisans. Apartments are very contemporary and halls are covered with artwork. In spite of its modern renovations and freshly painted walls, though, rumours persist of its haunting. Visitors, workers and artists of the space claim some prisoners and guards still haunt their former home. Residual sounds of riots are also frequently reported due to the prison's history of such occurrences. Judy Krasnow, an employee at the renovated Arts Village, hosts daytime historic tours of the prison, so a visitor can see the hauntings for themselves. She is also a resident of the prison and lives on site. She has confessed she believes her apartment, which was once a series of prison cells, has ghosts. Furthermore, Judy is not the only resident who believes that. Even though the upper floors have undergone renovations, the underground section that holds solitary confinement remains structurally intact. Although cells have been removed, there is intensity in this area that cannot be denied. And finally, in at number 1 we have the Whitney restaurant. Located on Woodward Avenue, Restaurant Whitney was the former mansion home of David Whitney. David was one of the Midwest's wealthiest lumber barons at the turn of the century, and he built this magnificent 21,000 square foot home in 1894. The mansion was restored in the mid-1980s, and since then reports of unexplained paranormal activities have been reported, such as shadow figures have been seen on the second floor, disembodied voices have been heard, and other strange phenomena have occurred. It is known that the mansion is haunted by Whitney and his first wife Flora. Flora always wanted to live in a mansion but died before the home was finished, leaving Whitney to raise their 4 children. A year after Flora's death, Whitney married her sister Sarah, leaving Flora's ghost to forever live in distress. The paranormal activity within the restaurant is not for the faint-hearted, as there have been reports of the elevator travelling between floors on its own with no one inside to operate it. Furthermore, ghosts have been witnessed on the upper floors, with one staff member seeing an older man looking out the window. The staff member approached the man asking him to leave, and right before the staff's eyes, the man vanishes into the floor. Other reports include noises that sound like silverware and kitchenware being handled and or stacked in table settings keep getting moved around by some unseen presence. The outhouse is said to be the most haunted part of the property. It was originally built for Whitney's slaves and has been largely untouched for years, mostly due to the fear of paranormal. Inside the outhouse is a dining table that is set for the afternoon tea and has been untouched for as long as anyone can remember. Today is still perfectly set but covered in a thick layer of dust, adding to the ghostly atmosphere. The outhouse has no electricity, so sits in the darkness at night. A tour guide who once worked at the Whitney insisted that the building was haunted for his experiences working there. The worker claims a group of dolls vanished from a room inside the building. Also, the worker has reported hearing his name being called from an empty area of the building. The Whitney Mansion is an elegant and beautiful property but has high body counts, a haunting history, and plenty of supernatural sightings still happening today.
Number 5. Chateau de Montsegur. A petite and quaint fortress in southern France, sitting atop a 170-meter drive uphill. Its ruins now nothing but rock and rubble, but once a safe house for the Cathars. The Cathar vision of the universe was dualist, in that good and light confronts evil and darkness. Right? Pretty straightforward. Very Jedi of them. This belief led them to follow a very disciplined way of life. Before, of course, they were decimated from the Catholic Church, initiated by Pope Innocent III. Innocent, huh? The ruins nicknamed now Satan's Synagogue. Yeah, nice and light right off the top, huh, Kyle? Described as one of the last Cathar castles and has been listed as a monument historique by the French Ministry of Culture. Cathar, from Greek meaning pure. These people were devout. In 1233, the site became the seat and head of the Cathar Church. The fort roughly housed about 500 people during this time. In 1242, a military of about 10,000 troops fought against the castle that was held up by only 100 Cathars. So like very Jedi all of a sudden. The siege lasted 9 months. Until 2 years later, the castle finally surrendered. North of 200 Cathars were burned in a giant bonfire unless they renounced and changed their faith, some taking the Cathar vow just weeks before this. Those who renounced the Cathar faith were allowed to leave, but the castle itself destroyed. The field below, now famously known to have been where hundreds of men and women were burned alive. The apparent bonfire that happened sparked a curse from the Cathar peoples. Legends of these ruins say any person who strays off the marked footpaths of these ruins and loses their footing will drop off of every side of the citadel in the sky. Sounds more like a metaphor to me than a curse. Number 4. Kalaupapa. In 1866, during the reign of Kamehameha V, Hawaiian officials passed a law designating this island the official site for patients affected with leprosy. Kalaupapa, a small peninsula in the north shore of Molokai, has quite a bitter and spooky history. The king exiled those who contracted Hansen's disease here, noting it was the ideal spot secluded and surrounded by the highest cliffs in the world. The peninsula served as a natural outdoor prison, accessible only by one steep path by foot or boat to shore. About 1,200 families were exiled to quarantine here. At the time, the disease wasn't really understood, believing it to be very incurable. Whisked off and locked away amid paradise in total isolation. No amenities, no buildings, or even potable water. Known by historians who visit it as, quote, the pit of hell itself. And apparently the most cursed place on earth. Yeah, I didn't know that. With this grim history of loneliness, despair, and death, it's not really surprising at all that Kalaupapa is said to be one of the most haunted places in all of Hawaii. This island was basically a death sentence for those on it. Shackles, cages, caves, sounds about right to be haunted by the afterlife. Number 3. The Vanishing Village. Way up north, a village named after a bountiful, massive freshwater lake in Canada's Nunavut. 1932. A Canadian fur trapper and explorer went to the village of Anjakuni Lake. The people's known there for their markets of elaborate fish and extensive wine. This village was a staple for most on the map. Joe LaBelle, a well-known fur trapper and well-known in the village, had an otherworldly sight when he arrived. He arrived and sensed something was a little wrong, a little too quiet, too foggy. He found that the village was completely emptied and deserted, even though there were lots of signs of life still present. Campfires blazing, pots still boiling, doors were even open, and food out waiting to be served. Thousands of Anjakuni villagers had simply vanished. He sent a telegraph to the closest RCMP office and told them about his account. And here's the scary part. They launched an official investigation which was never solved. They took a testimony from another trapper and his 2 sons who said they saw a large cylindrical object transform into a bullet shape before flying directly over Anjakuni Lake. At the village, the police found the kayaks were still on the beach, meals still in the early stages of rot, and apparently the headstones were even stacked neatly in piles on either side of the graves. Okay? To this day, there's no proper explanation for this mass disappearance of people and the hundreds of empty graves. Number 2. Skeleton Lake. Deep within the Himalayas of India lays the bay of an ancient lake, shrouded by an ancient mystery, Rupkund Lake, famously known as Skeleton Lake. It was rediscovered by the British Forest Rangers in 1942, and what they found was pretty jarring. Hundreds of ancient human skeletons found at the edge of the lake. Investigations led some to think that this was a catastrophe of some sort, or the remains of a legendary event where a group was suddenly killed in a violent storm around the 9th century. Nope! 3 different groups of people died here all at different times. It's not located on or near a trade route. No evidence of any ancient bacteria pathogen, ruling out diseases. Yeah, this one's really weird. One group of people had genetics to present-day South Asia, while the other group related to the people of Central Europe. And finally, a group particularly from the Greek island of Crete. But how? All here? They found the bones and deaths were genetically separated in time by as much as 1,000 years difference. Wooden artifacts, iron spearheads, even slippers and jewelry were found by the National Geographic team who studied 30 skeletons in 2003. Skin still on some of them. Ugh. 300 people have been found so far. Legend goes, Parvati, a supreme goddess, cursed the kingdom, unleashing drought and disaster upon them. She sent down a blizzard of hail and whirlwind which swept the people into the lake. Their skeletons are a warning to those who disrespect the goddess. I mean, maybe. The skeletons are visible in the clear water of the shallow lake during 1 month when the ice melts. That's terrifying. I'm gonna chicken out right now and just never visit this place. Just show up and get Jack Skellingtoned? Are you kidding me? No way, dude. And number 1, the City of Screams. Top of my relaxing trip list, Golgotha City, Afghanistan. Peaceful once as it was the capital of the Ghorid people, until Genghis Khan and the Mongol Empire seized it in about the 12th century. Apparently legend goes its ruler, Jalaluddin Mangburnu, fought back and apparently killed Khan's grandson in battle. Yeah, probably not a good idea. In 1221, Khan sent his 15-year-old Mudu Khan here to claim and siege, who in turn was shot and killed with an arrow, precipitating the siege of Bamyan. At first, the city held strong, but was apparently sold out by the ruler's daughter, who, according to legend, betrayed the castle's secret entrance, sharing and consorting with the enemy. expecting to be rewarded. Her and her people were unfortunately slaughtered. And the ruins, cursed, of course. And the ruins, cursed, of course. The Russians, the Taliban, and the Americans have all used these ruins as fighting posts over the years, as this place hasn't been lived in since. But through them is apparently very haunted, the ruins subject to those who still hear the screams of the fallen. Yeah. Terrifying. Haunting sounds of screaming and warfare are echoed here, thus giving it its famous name of the City of Screams. Dark horseback figures to even full-on uniformed specters are seen atop the rubble. Yeah, I just say we just avoid this place completely and just kind of back away slowly out of respect, you know?
Number 5 on this list is the Saas-van-Gent haunted house. As is customary on our top haunted places lists, pretty much every country has one home that's deeply haunted, and this is Belgium's. Culture Trip says, near the Dutch border there was a haunted house so popular it attracted ghost hunters from all over Europe. Its fame became its downfall, and the owner had it demolished for safety reasons in 2011. After all, old crumbled walls and moldy wood are a health hazard if downtrodden by enthusiastic photographers and are sure to annoy the locals. Besides safety reasons, the owner had his sights set on selling the property with or without the house. According to local legends, a German soldier was electrocuted near the house during World War I and his ghost remains in the home. He was joined by 4 Canadian soldiers during World War II. Their tank hit a mine on the property. There are several unsettling tales about the house. Cell phones suddenly had no service, watches stopped ticking, doors slammed shut, and curious visitors captured strange mist on their cameras. Whatever the truth, we may never know. Since it was demolished, the haunted house of Saas-van-Gent has turned into a legend. Now, even though the house is no longer there, the ghosts are still said to be in the area. The land here is deeply haunted with our respective World War I and World War II spirits. I find it really interesting that this home, or the ruins of it, aren't even haunted by a Belgian soldier at all, but literally by the ghosts of soldiers from different countries. I know that they died in unsettling and unnatural ways, and usually that's enough to leave a spiritual presence, but maybe the fact that it wasn't their home country added to this as well. Maybe it's harder to rest in peace when you're on foreign soil, when your family and loved ones are thousands of kilometers away. This is honestly just a theory that I was coming up with as I was writing this, so please comment down below if you think it might have some legs. Also, it should go without saying, but don't go visit this spot if you're ever in Belgium. Number 4 on this list is La Roche-en-Ardenne. We've already spoke about the haunted house. Well, another staple, especially for European countries, is the haunted castle. The castle La Roche-en-Ardenne is definitely one of Belgium's most haunted. Culture Trip writes, in the castle of La Roche-en-Ardenne, there used to live a nobleman with a very beautiful daughter named Berthe. He figured the best way to get a son-in-law was to organize a tournament and give the winner Berthe's hand in marriage. The story doesn't actually mention what Berthe thought of all this. The Count of Montsegur participated fiercely, despite already being engaged to another woman, Countess Alix de Selm. He won every game, but near the end of the tournament, a mysterious small knight in black entered the contest. Said knight killed the count and took Berthe to the bridal chamber. The next morning, the couple were found dead on the cliffs underneath the bridal chamber's window. The mysterious knight turned out to be Countess Alix de Selm, who had made a pact with the devil so she could kill her cheating fiancé and his wife-to-be. Ever since then, the Countess ghost haunts the castle. Well, that story honestly screams Shakespeare play to me if I've ever heard one. We got drama, betrayal, murder, it literally has everything. And usually when it has all of those elements, a ghost is left behind to haunt what remains. This story is no different, and the residents of this castle since then, plus any visitors who have come here, are constantly terrorized by the ghost of this countess. Apparently she doesn't hide her presence at all, but makes herself very known. She'll attack visitors and has even been reported as possessing people. Most of the time people make a full recovery from these possessions, but there have been reports where the trauma never goes away. Anyone who's willing to make a pact with the devil is certainly someone I want to stay away from, and being in ghost form makes that even worse. Number 3 on this list is the Sonian Forest. The Sonian Forest has a very strange phenomenon that occurs in it, which is locals believing it's haunted. Culture Trip says, Diogen is a strange fog that hovers in the Sonian Forest near Brussels. The fog has been described as greenish, but is also gray, orange, or white. What's consistent in the descriptions are small shadowy figures in the fog and the sound of loud laughing children. The name Diogen is a misspelling from the original name Diogen, which literally translates to the eyes. It's called the eyes because there's always something large in the fog that stares at you. There have been reports of the figures near the forest that dart in front of cars and a bloody little handprint on the car window that leaves as soon as the fog is gone. A bloody little handprint. That is a big no thank you from me, guys. This sounds like something that has come directly out of a horror film and something that should be avoided at all costs. Nobody knows why this fog appears, but the general consensus is that some very powerful ghostly entity conjures it. Who this entity or entities is or why they reside in this forest is unknown, just that they're extremely powerful. Locals are also very scared of this spot, and it's become infamous for disappearances throughout the years. Unless you want to disappear in a greenish smoke, I'd avoid it at all costs. Number 2 on this list is the John McRae Bunker. Ypres is a city full of history. You could almost say it's haunted by history. Step into the quiet Essex Farm Cemetery by the canal to uncover a ghostly site. The bunker is supposedly haunted by poet and physician John McRae. Many ghost hunters who come here claim to hear echoes of voices, gunshots from World War I, or even witness the ghost of John McRae and his friend Alex. The bunker is a memorial site in honor of John McRae's memory. He wrote the famous poem In Flanders Fields for friend and fellow soldier Alex Hemmler. Hemmler died on the battlefield, and McRae followed not long after, passing away from pneumonia. Some say that after hearing gunshots, you'll see flashes of Hemmler's ghost. Many European countries have at least one site that is haunted by the ghosts of soldiers, usually from World War I or World War II, and this bunker is Belgium's. It just so happens to be a very famous soldier though. Growing up in Canada and being Canadian, I've read and heard the poem In Flanders Fields many times. It honestly makes me really sad to hear this legend and know that John McRae's soul has yet to find peace and still clings to earth in what I can only imagine is a horrible purgatory state. If you do ever go to this place, then make sure to show some respect to him, his friend Alex, and all the other soldiers who lost their lives here. Maybe that's what his soul needs to finally pass on. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Crypts of Laken. These crypts are very close to the royal crypts of Belgium, but have been dubbed far creepier and far more haunted. Crypts are usually pretty creepy to begin with. One of the most haunted spots in the world is the Paris catacombs after all. These get especially riddled with ghosts though after they've been abandoned for a long period of time. And that's exactly what went down at the Crypts of Laken. For 30 years these crypts were completely forgotten about and abandoned, and those that were kept here just rotted away underground. 30 years later, a cemetery was built over top of this place and people started coming back. When they went down there again though, it wasn't how they remembered it. Creatures, dark beasts with red glowing eyes and an appetite for apparently only flesh live down there now. These underground crypts that stretch super far used to be only the home to the dead, but now they're also the home to these demon things. I personally see no appeal to going down to an ancient abandoned underground crypt anyways, but throw on some werewolf wannabes and this is definitely a spot that I'd avoid.